Uh, Hi guys, can you hear me?
Hey, we're gonna get started shortly. Thanks so much. Just gonna wait for a couple moment, 1 more minute. Yeah, thank you. All right, let's get started. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We're gonna dive straight in and introduce the panelists here. We're gonna start first with Anil Advani, the founder and managing partner of Inventors Law, and we also have Ankit Parashar, who's the co-founder of Salt, which is an India-based fintech company. Thanks so much. Ranveer Singh is also here, my co-founder and CTO. Thanks, Ranveer. So let's dig into the matter. We'll introduce with a little bit of background. I'm sure everyone's aware by now. And I'm actually going to start by just telling you a little bit about the situation from my perspective. I'm Anand Krishna, founder and CEO of Inkle. I live in Bangalore. Several hundred US Delaware C Corp venture-backed tech startups are our customers here at Inkle. We are a US CPA product. Obviously, since the last 48 hours, we've seen a tumultuous episode, and hundreds of our customers have been caught with more than $250,000 of deposits uninsured in Silicon Valley Bank. So we're here to just now try to figure out together a few of the next steps. We are also discovering things as we go along, so please bear with us. We would kindly ask you to keep monitoring. On our website, we've developed a small resource page, so I'm just going to show you that now. And the more we find out, the more we're going to share with you. Come on our page, resources for SVB, Depositors, Inkle.io. Just click at the top here, there's a little snack bar. We've got a little handbook under development, some videos, live updates. So we'll keep going throughout the next 48 hours with more resources. Anil Advani has also posted, from Inventors Law, has posted a PDF document, which we'll embed on our website as well, actually. Ranveer, could you take care of that? Which has a bunch of resources on it, and questions and answers from a legal perspective. So it's incredibly helpful. And Ankit has also collated a bunch of materials, so we'll post that on our website as well. All right, let's dive in. Anil, welcome you. I'm not sure where are you in India or you in?
Yes, Gurgaon. So
okay, so it's a reasonable hour for you. Thanks for joining. Would love to get your perspective on, given that you're obviously, you've incorporated hundreds of US startups for India-based founders. How are you seeing things, and do you have any brief initial comments?
let me start by thanking you again, Anand, for allowing me to join, and also comment that only a startup founder would call 9 p.m. on a Saturday reasonable hours. But that's our life as such. Yes, I mean, I've spent the last literally 36 hours, including almost all night, fielding calls from clients. All the hundreds of clients that we've set up, as you referred to, have been calling back. Many of them were set up at SVB, and for good reason, right? So I just want to start by saying that no one should feel that they did something wrong, including, as far as I know, that even the bank did anything wrong. And the uninsured amount, sort of reference to uninsured, also doesn't mean that you should think about whether you should have insured it or not. It's just the basic law that by law, up to $250,000 of your deposit in a FDIC insured bank, which almost every major bank in the US is automatically insured by the federal government, right? That's the only difference. So there is no such thing as an insured, or uninsured. It's just that the 250,000 is insured because the federal government puts its credit behind it, and that's what's happening now. The federal government has taken over, FDIC has taken over the bank, and they've created another banking organization, a shell company, that basically they will look at all the credible accounts, eligible accounts, and first of all, they'll put in 250,000 times those eligible accounts into that new bank, so that all of those claims can be paid out. So it is insured versus uninsured, but there is no such thing as, you couldn't, for example, have got $10 million of insurance, right? That's really the law requires that your deposits are insured up to 250K, but that's the best you could have done. We are obviously in very unprecedented times, right? So if you're hearing this will happen, or that will happen, or this should happen, or that should happen, I don't trust it. I would start by saying, because there is no other than FDIC coming in with specific statements, or Silicon Valley Bank, but I doubt that at this stage. But very likely FDIC will be has taken over, and any communication should come from official sources. We are just like you guys. We are obviously, looking very carefully at all of that. The memo that you referred to, we spent some time going through precedent, right? So all we've done is we've looked at what did FDIC do in the past, and what are the rules that FDIC is required to follow. Now, whether it plays out exactly the way as such on Monday or not is to be determined, because there's no roadmap for this, because it's so unprecedented. It's only happened like maybe a handful of times before. So that's my opening thoughts. We can go into specific questions and all of that as well.
Super. Thanks so much, Anil. Yeah, really, I guess, troubling to see such an iconic bank that's been supporting entrepreneurship in global corridors, not just Silicon Valley, global corridors for 4 decades. And obviously, it's devastating to see the impact it's had on employees, companies, customers all over the world. So yeah. All right, Ankit, brief initial thoughts.
Yeah, hi. Hello, everyone. I'm co-founder of Salt. We are a cross-border payments company startup. We launched nearly a year ago. Though, like, we have done a lot of work, or have been doing a lot of work in certain aspects which came useful, like in past couple of days. Thank you so much, Anand, for arranging this. I think it's well needed at this point of time, because people actually don't know what to do next, right? And that is something that we have been guiding through. I think you must be receiving more calls than me at this point of time, because nearly everyone has your number, to be honest, right? And I don't know. I have not been able to sleep, so I don't think you have slept as well. So thank you so much for all the support that you have given. We're just trying to do best. Luckily, we were not affected, but we are now able to help a lot of startups. So we will discuss that as we go on in the session. But I think we need to understand, like, there are a lot of transactions that we know have moved out of SVB, have not landed yet in Indian bank accounts. So we need to handle those. We need to handle the funds that have yet to come from to SVB. Where do people take them, right? Even if they're getting to 50K, where do they take them, right? Getting those bank accounts, getting the safer bank account options. Like, obviously, people have money in Brex. We have nearly all the money in Brex at this point of time, but we are thinking that it is safe for now, and they are FDIC insured till 1 million if you have money in the cash account. So we have rolled out a guide on that as well. So doing some work to educate and understand, like, make people understand how to handle it. I think we can discuss more as we go on, but there are a lot of integrated aspects that people should know right now, so that they don't fall prey to them later on. And there are short-term plans and long-term plans that they need to be aware of. So we can move ahead.
Sure. Thanks so much. So we also requested a couple of reps from some other fintechs to come on as well. In the meantime, let's get started straight into questions and answers. Harshit Zavedi is asking, what's the worst case, average case, and best case scenario that could happen here? I presume, Harshit, you're talking about depositors, balances being recoverable. So that's presumably why most people are concerned about. So Anil, I actually ask your input on this. Do you have a perspective on worst case, average case, best case here?
Yeah, so I would not. I'll certainly address that specifically as well. But in terms of, and our memo sort of talks about that somewhat. But again, based on what the FDIC has seen or done in the past, in one of these, very few limited circumstances where we've had to deal with these issues, we should expect that first things first on Monday, maybe Tuesday, but most likely by Monday we should be getting $250,000. I mean, obviously, if you have less than 250,000, you're not getting 250. Up to 250,000 as export amounts in your bank accounts. Again, we've talked to FDIC. The clear answer is you don't need to do anything. You don't need to fill any forms. You don't need to prove anything. They have all of your information. Anand, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so they should have all your information to get that 250,000 into your account. It should be automatic, and everyone expects and hopes that it comes Monday morning. So that's first part of business. So make sure you have that. And to Ankit's point, you should have set up another bank account so that what they'll do is they'll deposit that money into this agency and then contact you so that you can give them wire information to another bank account. So I'm not going to get into Brex versus any others. You guys decide as founders, both current short-term and long-term, what the best options are. We would certainly recommend you have another alternate bank account set up and ready to receive those funds as soon as Monday.
Apologies, I didn't start the recording. Thank you. Yeah.
So that's the first order of business, right? You should expect 250,000 coming into the bank that's been set up and then being distributed right away. So you should be ready to receive those and have another account where those funds can come in. After that, and again, it's not clear, and we are working with FDIC, and they should be publishing whatever the steps are, but we expect again, then there'll be some sort of a distribution based on their estimate of what assets, liabilities, very conservative. We expect it to be very conservative. So somewhere from 10% to 50%, somewhere in the middle of that, they will divvy up as dividends based on their conservative estimate of how much net assets they will have after taking care of all the liabilities, and based on, again, a very conservative value of the assets. So that should happen over the next few weeks. And then becomes the tricky part, right? Which is, what is the value of the remaining assets? So, I mean, to step back, FDIC basically is a receiver. It's like a trustee or a liquidator as such. So their fiduciary obligation is to A, protect the assets, and B, once they protected the assets by not allowing people to withdraw all the cash they can, which was the primary concern. And I wish they'd done it earlier. But that's their primary concern. And then B, the second fiduciary obligation is to make sure that they can extract the maximum value for the assets. So there'll be financially responsible people who will be looking at various options of whether to liquidate one asset over the other, what the value should be, whether hold or sell, like any other investment decision. And that process could be somewhere between, again, very rough estimate, 3 to 6 to 12 months. And it will be an ongoing process. So what the next step they'll do after giving you some dividends is giving you a certificate, which will give you a legal right to up to that maximum amount, which is basically the total amount that you have on deposit. Whether you have to fill up forms or show anything or not is, again, to be determined. Based on what they did in the past, again, FDIC has all of everyone's information. If something missing or has changed, obviously it'll be for you to confirm and work with them directly. But otherwise, it'll be a very you'll get an email at your registered email address with the details of how much you're getting paid as a dividend, hopefully next week. And then as you go along, as they start liquidating assets, they should be distributing it based on effectively a pro rata of every sort of deposit on account. And that the good thing is, under federal law, the depositors are higher priority than shareholders and even other sort of obligations. So any liquidation proceeds will first come to us after taking care of any expenses, legal fees, liquidation fees. My very rough guess is that leads me to believe that and see, obviously, the value of the assets will drop because of, obviously, pressure from the markets and concerns. So what that means is very unlikely that we will see 100% of the value. So can you hear me? I can, no?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. Yeah, please. All right, thanks, Anil. I think we have, Anil, you can hear me, right?
He's frozen for me.
Okay, yeah,
Can
sorry.
you guys hear me?
Yeah, Anil, you keep freezing up a little bit, actually. Sorry, it's not a great connection there. I have a couple more folks here, so we're going to jump to them, and we'll come back to Anil once the connection stabilizes. I actually asked Puya to join Wasogi from Brex. Puya, can you hear me?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. Puya is going to just step in for a few minutes while we have him. Thank you, Puya. Thanks, Anil. We're going to come back to you. Puya, just brief input. How are you guys coping there with things? And can you give us some insights on how India-based and global-based founders can open up Brex accounts and how it's been processed, how quickly you're able to process it, what's the best way to reach out to Brex, and any other urgent things like that.
Yeah, no problem. Nan, thanks for having me jump on the call. Appreciate everyone's time on this call. Needless to say, this is not a call that I enjoy jumping on or having the dialogue about. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a 15-year banking vet, worked at Wells Fargo and then made the pivot to Brex about a year ago. So a lot of friends, a lot of colleagues, a lot of customers and founders that I know are definitely impacted by the recent circumstances. And it's not a good look for fintech and banking as a whole. And hopefully, we're rooting for them to pull out of this all right, and the impacts are minimized. That being said, for those of you that aren't familiar with Brex, we're a prominent fintech company out here in the United States, carved out about 5 years ago to focus on corporate cards and banking supplements. We can't call them bank accounts because we're not a chartered bank, but they still operate and have the same insurances such as FDIC insurance and the whole 9 yards. So you can do everything that you were doing at Silicon Valley Bank or any banking competitor on the Brex platform. What made Brex pretty unique compared to the banks, I could tell you because I was working at Wells Fargo, is that they can underwrite and establish corporate cards in matters of like 2 to 7 days. The underwriting is based off of, being a US entity. So you have to have something domiciled in the United States. You have to be professionally invested in, whether it's a VC accelerator, well-known angel investor, or be in the process of raising capital within the next 90 days. So there's different ways to work around that piece. In terms of the situation that's going on right now, we have a fast track application process that we put in place just yesterday. It's brex.com/fast track. So that's with 2 T's. Anon will post it on the chat or send you guys communication on it. If you guys are interested in setting up the account, go through that application link, submit the application. Once you submit the application, you will send an email to fasttrack@brex.com. And myself and like a lot of the individuals on the startup org are capturing those emails, putting you guys on a fast track document. And we are trying our best to get approvals within 24 hours. That being said, it is the weekend. So, we're working with what we have and we're still getting approvals in place, but I can't sit here and, give you guys a pure confirmation that it would be opened, first thing Monday morning. And I understand a lot of you guys are across the world, so it could be a little discrepancy in timing. But what I'm seeing on current work streams is that we are getting a lot of these applications approved as long as they're completed and all the documentation's in place and you guys are responding as quick as possible to the service or application team on that front. Just a couple little insights just about Brex again. It comes with a Brex Cash account. It's associated with a yield opportunity as well. I can't speak about it because I am not licensed. So there are other reps that you can ask those questions specifically around. But in terms of FDIC insurance, I know that's a topic on hand. As Anil alluded to earlier, coming from banking, every bank offers $250K in FDIC insurance. That's just a common fact and is based off of the EINs of the companies that are established. Brex does have a special workaround because we partner with so many different banking partners. I believe there's 10 of them that we pull the cash with, that you actually can get up to $1 million in FDIC insured fund. That being said, as Anil mentioned earlier, strategy for most of you individuals is going to be to diversify. So you may want to look into 1 or 2 different banking providers. I came from banking. I'm the first person. And I will tell you, you should always have 2 banking institutions to work with, because when situations like this arise, you don't want to monopolize your cash. You don't want to monopolize your business based off one partner, and you want to be able to move as quickly as possible. So, there are many great options out there, Brex being one of them. If you guys decide that we can be a value partner, we're more than happy to onboard you. If you find that there are others out there, please leverage your resources and reach out to them as soon as possible. Other than that, Anon, if you guys had some questions, I could answer them pretty quickly. I can't jump too much into the weeds because I'm not licensed, but I could maybe give you an overall answer on some things.
Thanks, Puya. Really helpful. Puya, how best can these folks reach out? It's fasttrack@brex.com, right?
Yep. So it's fasttrack@brex.com. If you forget it, just Google Brex and you'll see it's like the first thing that populates on the screen.
Is
And
that
then,
there in the chat? Sorry.
yep, that is the correct link. Once you guys go through that application process, please make sure to email. Fasttrack@brex.com is what you're going to email. The application link is brex.com/fasttrack.
Okay, I'm posting that here. Well,
Yeah, so there you go. So brex.com/fasttrack is where you're going to apply. Then once you do the application, then email fasttrack@brex.com and our team will capture the application. We'll put you on the fast track. For those individuals that are on YC, just in the title of the email that you're saying, just put your YC in the date, YC 2022, name of the company in the title, just so that we're aware that you're a YC company and we attribute the YC promotion in place. Those of you that are not on YC, Inkle and Brex have created a strategic partnership where you do get benefits. So for those individuals, please email Anand, and Anand will forward me a list of your guys' companies and emails that were applied with, and I could go in there and tag the Inkle benefits as well.
great, thanks so much. We do have a tie-up, brex.com/Inkle, but right now I want you all to, if you need it, to use brex.com/fasttrack, you'll get faster service. We'll deal with the partnership later. All right. Thanks, Puya. One question for you. It's a couple of questions in the crowd for you, but one question I have for you. You emphasize that Brex has FDIC insurance for the balance up to $250,000. Can you just talk a little bit more about that? And the SIPC coverage as well? Or in fact, so you can't talk about that, right?
Yeah, so I can't talk about the SIPC, even though I was licensed for 15 years. I just don't have active licenses. All that detail, you if you're really concerned about the SPI or SIPC, just Google it, and it's pretty clear on how that works. It's all security based, so it has a little bit of a different song and dance. But on the FDIC insurance part, again, every banking institution is $250,000 FDIC insurance. When you go on Brex's, if you want to look at the banks that Brex partners up, just Google, strategic bank partners for Brex, and it will populate you to a Brex hyperlink. After the conversation, I'll post it in the chat for you guys. I have the link, and you guys could see like there's 10 banks that we work with. Some notable ones such as HSBC and JP Morgan Chase. And so for just the sake of this conversation, just know that if you go with Brex, it is covered up to $1 million. It's pooled with communities banks. So, there's no catch or gimmick to that. It's just something that a fintech can do a little differently than a traditional, mid corporate or community bank. So you have that accessibility, and the processes would be the same. If in the event of any default, it would be like the same as, what's going on with SVB, where you get that insurance put in place as quick as the FDIC sets up that legal entity and the whole 9 yards that we're witnessing right now.
That's great. Thank you. We're going to just quickly see if there's any questions out here. It's a little difficult to search through, so I'm going to ask you to raise your hands if you have a question for Puya live. Dheeraj, is your question for Puya? We only have Puya for a few minutes, so I wanted to take Puya up front. Okay. MK has a question for Puya.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, please.
Thanks, Puya. We had an account with, we are a startup. We had an account with Brex, but our main account was with Silicon Valley Bank, so we were not making many transactions on the Brex side. So based on one of the decisions you guys took last year, our account was shut down.
Okay.
So what should I do now? Should I apply totally new again, or should I send an email to reinstate the closed account?
Yeah. Great question. So that's very typical at any bank. When there's inactive accounts, they'll generally shut them down. That's same at, SVB, Wells Fargo, and Brex, I guess. So I would suggest just going through the fast track link and just resubmitting, unless you're able to go on brex.com and log in and see an actual Brex cash account. That being said, you raised a really good point. If you guys are current Brex card holders, meaning you have the corporate card, all you have to do is you got to log on to the Brex dashboard, and then there's a feature for Brex Cash in the corner, and you click that and you can begin the application process for Brex Cash right there. You don't need to go through the fast track piece. Just when you go through that and you submit it, email that fast track email chain to let us know that you guys have created a Brex Cash account and you're an existing Brex card holder. So you don't need to do 2 steps and do a completely new application.
Great, thanks very much. We're gonna take Dheeraj if you're still there. You're still on mute. Jitin Basan for Puya.
Yeah, hi, Anand, Puya, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so Puya, we are a customer of Brex. We've been using Brex for a while. My question is pertaining to MMF investments. I understand that Brex holds these investments in partnership with the Bank of New York Mellon and is managed by an entity which is called Dreyfus Government Cash Management Fund, right? So this is not covered under FDIC, is my understanding, but I want to confirm, is there any security backing to these investments, or like, is the only assumption that these are largely invested into US Treasury securities and hence should mimic the rate of, let's say, security that otherwise Treasury securities demonstrate?
Yeah. So again, great question. I cannot answer that because I am not licensed, but they are insured by the SIPC. And if you Google the SIPC, it'll sort of give you a natural breakdown of how that looks. If there are questions on sort of how that impacts you at Brex, I would email the Brex support team, and the licensed individual can give you the answer. I'm really sorry. I would get in a lot of trouble if I told you the answer, which I know it is. I have the answer. I can't because of the license factor.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, Pierre.
Thanks, Jason. Ankit has a quick question here. Ankit?
Hi, Pia. So basically, we are also a Brex credit card user, and we have set up our auto pay with SVB Bank. Now that a bank is frozen, so would we still be able to use Brex credit card without any auto pay setup?
Yeah, so that's another great question. That's something I am trying to understand myself, because I know a lot of Brex clients did not use the Brex cash offering and held their funds at SVB, and we underwrote the limits based on the funds that we were able to view in SVB. I don't have like the answer today. I think that's something they're sort of figuring out over the weekend, if there's going to be either an emergency credit limit put in place or a credit line opportunity, because the way that Brex works, it is a real-time view of your cash on hand, and then your limit is based off the cash on hand, and that gets adjusted appropriately if cash is depleted or increased. So I don't know the answer. I'm trying to visualize, like, if SVB doesn't have those funds accessible, what would that impact on the Brex side of things? But I'm sure a lot of communication, not sure, I know a lot of communication is going to be coming out either over the weekend or first thing on Monday morning, as we sort of have a clarity on what SVB's next steps are.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Thanks to the live questions there. We're gonna switch gears if there's I think there was one or two more for Puya. I think Puya answered this about the credit card just now. You heard that Brex keeps funds in US regional banks. Okay, I think you addressed that, right, Puya? The funds are kept. Sorry, may I ask you to respond to that one?
Which one? What was the question?
The question is, we heard that Brex keeps funds in US regional banks. Mm-hmm. Are we in danger? Do you want to just quickly comment where the funds are kept?
Yeah, I posted on the chat for you guys, so you guys can see all the banking partners that we use for the Brex cash offering. So you'll see a bunch of different banks, some corporate banks like East West Bank and JP Morgan, and you'll see some of like the more community banks like Merchant Banks and Wheaton Bank and Trust. In terms of the risk, that's like the $1 million question that I think everyone in the financial industry is trying to figure out today. Is this a 2007 event where WAMU goes down and all of a sudden all these smaller banks get exposed on their balance sheets and they close down? I am leaning towards the side that's probably not the case, because SVB was very much specific on tech, and a lot of these issues are around depository actions that were done with funds that, you know, came from a lot of tech companies. I don't think a lot of banks are leveraging that kind of deposits, especially with these smaller banks. I don't know. I don't work at these banks, but you know, for all intents and purposes of the conversation, I would be comfortable with these banks and the FDIC insurance that comes with them. Again, the way it works is it's pooled amongst all these banks. So if any of these banks were to go, you know, belly up, for example, then you would get that 250 regardless. That being said, if you're losing sleep over where your deposits are at night, you just want to be diversified. You want to have multiple banking partners. On the flip side, I would not suggest opening 15 bank accounts like I had clients do back in 2007. That's just very hard to manage, and there's not much practicality on there, because at that point, if all those banks close, and the world has ended officially. But you know, I would target, you know, specific banking partners, you know, fintech stack, a major corporate bank, you know, maybe a regional bank, just to sort of have that peace of mind at night, and you have a little more coverage if that's going to be feasible for your operations and your teams and processes.
Thank you. We're going to switch gears to transfers a little bit. I'm going to take one question for you, Puya, and then I know you're swamped with incoming. So Puya, just quick one on transfers. Can you comment on what transfers you're seeing coming through out of SVB, and what are the statuses of transfers that were initiated last night? For example, was there a cutoff? Are you aware of anything about it around that?
I'm not aware much on the transfer side of things. I know those that had accounts with Brex, it was majority just wire transfers. That's the quickest and highest dollar amount that you put into any one of your bank accounts. I think with a lot of accounts, there are caps on how much you could send via ACH. So when you guys do and have the opportunity to move funds, make sure it's a wire transfer, because then you can move 100% of your funds, compared to specific limitations and caps that may be associated with accounts within Brex or outside of Brex, because there's just specific risk guards that banks put in place, which I would not know the numbers for. So when you do have the opportunity, just send a wire. That way, you know, all your funds are going in one spot, and then you could do your disbursements at that point.
Great. Okay. Thanks so much, Puya. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming and joining us. Yeah, we'll hopefully have folks reach out to you at fasttrack@brex.com.
All right. Take it easy, everyone.
Thanks. Let's switch gears back to let's stay on transfers, but switch gears back to the other panelists here. I'm going to start with Ankit here. Ankit, what are you seeing in terms of transfers, both in and out of SVB accounts? You've seen quite a lot of chatter about this, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think I got to know as soon as the markets opened. It opened at negative 40% for SVB. And then I think there was some chatter from VCs to kind of like rumor that we heard that some VCs have asked their portfolio to move out. And that's when the hustle bustle started. People started talking about moving funds out. They were not very clear on if they should move or not. And then suddenly, I think because of that chatter and all, people started moving out in masses. They started doing it, and at that point of time, I think there was night in India, so no one knew. And a lot of people woke up. A lot of people woke their CFOs up and started moving out. That's, I think, when the majority of the transfers happened. I think one of the mistakes that people might have done at that point of time was using ACH instead of Fed, as he was just telling earlier, because ACH takes time to settle and to collect as well. It might not have debited. Now, I think that day, most of the transactions would have gone through, but we were just not aware, right? When we woke up, people woke up next day, that's when the whole, things went upside down, at least for Indian founders, because most of them knew at that point of time what has happened. And that's when you're on mute.
Yeah.
So that's when it happened, right? For nearly everything that happened at that point of time, people started moving. And that's when the whole thing got crashed as well, right? So SVB interfaces were crashed as well. So people started reaching out for that. People started reaching out how to move. They did not have bank accounts at the point of time with any other service provider than SVB, because obviously SVB was much more secure than parking your funds at Brex or Mercury, right? So we started suggesting them to open accounts, started helping them with that. Do I talk about the accounts as well at this point?
Yeah, we'll come to the accounts. I want to focus on this.
So I think that is the thing, and people transferred to their accounts elsewhere. People also transferred via FDI to India.
Sure.
So I think these are two things that people do, like folks did, and I think a lot of these FDIs of our clients are still not settled, though they have, I think, left SVB.
Sure.
So that's where they are right now.
Thank you. Anil, would love to get your understanding on transfers. What was there a cutoff on transfers from your entitled to see that they get transferred through?
Yeah, so before I answer that, I have a question for Ankit. I mean, when you say that funds had left SVB, what is that determination? Because I have an answer to Anand, your question, but it's also dependent on how Ankit answers that question, because that's really the key, right? How will FDIC or whoever's in charge now determine? And I'll go back to our timeline on what the next steps are. But talk about that, Ankit, what your understanding of the funds leaving SVB is.
Yeah, so all banks work on a corresponding bank relationships where you have nostros with other banks where you park funds and you use that for international movements. SVB probably and should have had those relationships with larger banks like JP Morgan Chase and Citibank and other banks. So when they schedule a payment, you will see that they first schedule a payment that goes into a batch file or something like that. Then it goes into processing and then processed. So when they say process, that's when the money moves out, right? Your account is debited. They send empty 103 to a receiving bank and empty 202 to the corresponding bank. So like that's the process. Now, when they say like I think there are some questions around my status changed from scheduled to pending, and we don't know yet, like if it processed or not from SVB. But the clients whose transaction got processed have not yet received because it takes a day or two for everything to happen. And we don't even know at this point of time how the messages around SWIFT and KYCs, etc., would be handled at this point of time when the bank does not exist. How Indian banks will react to that. So we do not, I don't think we have any, like we would have to take specific compliance approvals for that later on. That's another thing that will happen. But at this point of time, that's how it happens.
Yeah, so picking up on that, few things, right? So there are two parts, right? One is local domestic transfers and the other is international transfers. So, and I've got a lot of questions on both, frankly, and I want to take this to also get answers from you that I can share with others and obviously for everyone on the panel. So if it's from pending to in process for a domestic transfer, because how does a founder or whoever is looking, how do they know that that pending is actually or in process is left the bank or not for domestic only?
I would not be aware of that exactly because I don't know how Fed wire works precisely, but SWIFT is something that we do know about. So I think I would have a knowledge limitation there.
And the complication of that, because they are relying on a third party and the timings could be longer. My recommendation is that at least get the money out of SVB. That's the priority, or now whoever is in charge. So open a US local bank account, Brex, whoever else, wherever else, get the money out. And then if you think that's not safe, then transfer to India or however your financial advisor advise you, or buy bonds or whatever it is. But it might take longer to do the SWIFT transfers, the information, the pending versus, cleared. The third party bank might reject it and it comes back and then you are dead, because that money is gone to the back of the line. So highest priority should be open a bank account. So it's a domestic to domestic transfer, get the money out of SVB, then deal with everything else to Brex or whoever else you want to talk to. So that's helpful. Again. So in terms of the timelines, I mean, again, based on just precedent, right? Because FDIC hasn't come out to our knowledge, any official statement. What would happen is they would pay out any existing obligations of SVB. So if SVB had written checks or cashier's checks, had any other obligations that were already accepted, including wires that have been accepted, and that's where the definition of accepted comes in, and nobody at SVB is actually available to answer. But however that's defined, and however that's defined by FDIC on Monday, that legally they're required to honor those payments before they do make any payments to other depositors, because that's a binding obligation to the extent it had become binding and already been processed before FDIC took over, right? So again, keep in mind, there's a before and after timeline, and it's very critical which part of the timeline you're on. After FDIC took over, there is no Silicon Valley Bank. It's all gone into receivership. But as a receiver, they still have to honor the obligations that had been arisen of SVB prior to their taking over. Interesting sort of tidbit. If you look at Wikipedia right now, they've already listed SVB as used to be a bank. So it's rest in peace. So it's very clearly said that it actually went defunct on March 10th. So it's important for everyone to get that in your mind that there is no Silicon Valley Bank, right? So I think Brex or whoever was saying that Silicon Valley Bank will come out with clarification. There is no Silicon Valley Bank, so don't waste your time. Now, if you have friends there you want to reach out to for personal reasons, do it. But all your attention should be at the FDIC and what they're coming out with, because they are now in charge 100%, right? And if you haven't already, and if you somehow have access, please keep copies of your bank accounts showing the balances. And if you had wired money out, keep snapshots of the fact that when you wired, the timelines, because all of that could be very critical in whether you are in the first batch that gets paid as a binding obligation versus after FDIC takeover. So to the extent you haven't done it and are able to do it, please take care of that. You know.
Cool. Yeah, questions coming through here. Do we know the exact timestamp when the FDIC took over? We do. It was on Friday, but I'm not sure that that will necessarily be the only impact on the recovery amount, because I've seen that there are plans to recover transactions from post the takeover. Anil, have you heard about that?
No, I think that is important, because as I said, if the wires or payments had been approved prior to takeover, then they are binding obligation and have to be paid before any depositors, anybody else gets paid.
Okay, sorry.
So it depends on really which side of that timeline you're on.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the transactions that are still tagged as in process. In your perspective, those will go through on Monday.
Well, again, that we don't know, right? Whether in process is defined is a sort of a description for approved. And as Ankit was saying, it might also depend on whether it's a domestic transfer versus subject to a SWIFT approval by an intermediary bank that has to still approve that transfer, for example. I don't know enough about the banking side of things to confirm that. But again, the expectation is that if it was pushed out to the queue from Silicon Valley Bank side, then it's already approved. And that timeline we've told is March 10th. So anything on close of day business March 10th should be, and as long as it was approved. The only question is whether in process means approved or not. I don't know. That's more of a purely banking issue, and it will also depend on whether it's domestic versus international. But if your payment had been approved, and if your friends at Silicon Valley Bank can tell you, yes, it was approved, then you should be good to get the payment on Monday or Tuesday at the early, by Monday or Tuesday at the latest.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to dig deeper here. If we initiate a transfer from SVB to Indian account 10 a.m. Friday morning, but the amount shows as processing before the portal was taken down, what are the chances of the amount left SVB? So I think the answer to that is we'll just have to see what happens on Monday. If it was a SWIFT wire and it was done prior to the takeover, there seems to be confidence here that it will be processed. SWIFT transactions obviously would take a day. So it seems as though the onus is there to see the transaction through if it was initiated before the government stepped in.
I would like to add something here. So I think that would be useful for people later on. So when you SWIFT, it goes into a queue processing, right? Now it might be that your specific SWIFT had some mistakes, or you put in a wrong detail or something like that. So it might get rejected at SVB level, or it might get rejected at the corresponding bank level, or there might be multiple corresponding banks in place where it goes into a manual processing mode. Either it is corrected or reverted back. We hope that banks that are right now working on are considerate enough to manually check it and do it, but they would not contact you because they can't, because they don't have your details. So if everything is fine, then it would have gone through. If the cutoff time is like coming in the same thing that Anil said, if you're on the right side of the timing and your transaction was rightly made, then you will go through. Otherwise, it will go into manual, which SVB probably would not have processed because they would not have been in situation to do it. and similarly on the corresponding bank side. So it might happen that you initiated faster than someone else and still your transaction did not go through. So that I wanted to clarify.
Okay, so it depends on the veracity of the transfer.
Yeah.
Got it. Singapore incorporated company are trying to open a USD account. I think that's probably something we'll take offline. There are USD options for Singapore banks, including DBS and Aspire over there, and a couple of others. Ankit, do you have any input on that?
Yeah, I think we contacted Aspire founder, told that they are fast tracking a lot of applications, even for US customers.
Thanks.
They did not even have a tech in place to do it, so they were doing it over email. So you can do it. Singapore, I think it's sorted for them. I think not a lot of issues and a lot of options, DBS and all to open accounts. So
okay,
that's how. If you're an Indian founder, then you can look at Gift City as well as an option that we'll discuss later on.
great. Akshay asks, are deposits of non-SVB customers equally protected by FDIC insurance as compared to companies incorporated in the US? Are the deposits in US Treasury funds made through SVB by a cash sweep also at risk? So the first question, I'm not sure I understood this. Ankit, do you have a perspective on this? Deposits of non-SVB customers equally protected?
Yes, there is no. So when FDIC insures, there is no, differentiation that they make from one bank to another. So or like where the account holder is from. So I don't think that is a limitation that they will place. So everyone is protected by 250K.
Okay, sorry, I understood now what you're saying. You're saying SVB US accounts opened by non-US companies. I think that's what that's saying.
No, I think they're asking if non-SVB, non-US customers, right? Yeah. So it is equally protected by law.
Yeah, great.
I don't think
about MMA, in Treasury.
Yeah. So I don't think SVB had a cash sweep product. That is what Brex does. That's their proposition, and Mercury does this as well. SVB, being a bank themselves, did not have that product, I think, as far as we know. Otherwise, they would have a higher limit as well.
Yeah, I think they mean to the MMA. Let's
yes, that's an MMA question.
Yeah. Sohail's asking the same question. I know a quick perspective on that protection for the MMA portion, which does not fall under FDIC.
So I'm not. I have no insight into that at all.
Yeah, well, I'll answer that. The MMA portion is not part of the FDIC insured sum. It's a separate portion, which actually has its own insurance. So we'll talk a little bit about that. All right. I think we're done with that one. What's the process to get the 250,000? Okay, so this is an important one. Anil, you've seen quite a few customers reach out to you. There's no need to send letters and emails. I think that's quite simple. The FDIC has a website they put out. We'll post it here in the chat. Ranveer, post that in the chat. And a simple application on Monday will do the trick, right, Anil?
Yes, I mean, you should have a bank account ready to receive those funds, right? That's the key. I think also let's just amplify on what it means, the 250K limit, right? If you have multiple accounts, for example, again, if they're all accounts under the same EIN number for the same account, for the same company, for example, then even if you have multiple accounts, you only get one 250K. On the other hand, if you have multiple accounts, so if you have husband and wife, right? I don't know, but if husband and wife with two separate social security numbers, two separate accounts, they would qualify for 250K each, right? So similarly, a company with multiple accounts, multiple category of accounts, and we're still fleshing out what that means, but will qualify for 250K each. But in almost all cases, the people on the folks on the call here have checking and savings accounts for one company. So those would both combined have a total of 250K coverage, not 250K each. So that's also important to know.
Okay, great. Thank you. What happens to the wires that's already okay, there's a couple of questions about wires, which I think we touched on, and transfers made on Friday and Thursday still in processing. We touched on that as well. Should startups have multiple bank accounts and ensure no more than 250,000 in each to avoid this issue in future? Ankit?
Yeah, I think, see, you should have multiple bank accounts, but not for FDIC insurance, but just to diversify. If you have larger sums of money parked in your bank account, you should actually send it and mark, like you should do some treasury management via advisors. So we are not advisors. I think we are not licensed as well. And we should not be giving advice on this, but open bank accounts for your expenses and all. Keep whatever money is till FDIC limits. And if there are larger banks, you can trust with larger sums of money. But most of the funds, if you're larger funds, would move into markets. Typically, that's how fund management is done. So most of the bigger companies would have fund managers and advisors doing it for them. And that's a risk that the company takes on their individual level, not on the bank's level. So and that's the answer to that.
Got it. So let's talk a little bit about the payments. So Anil, you mentioned 2 or 3 payments or availabilities. Up to $250,000 available on Monday. Later in the week, once the banks or the government's had a chance to sell some assets and securities, then another payment or another availability would be available later in the week, and then the rest will go into the government claims, government back
the receivership, and then that will come out based on the value of the assets and whoever's making those decisions on trying to extract the maximum value. Again, a very rough estimate based on nothing except instinct, really, but I'll share it. I think, firstly, as I was saying, we should not expect a federal government bailout. We should not expect someone to come and buy out the bank, which means that very unlikely that we'll get 100% of the money back. And we should expect that the value of the assets will continue to deteriorate as the markets up, open and SVB gets hammered and perhaps some of the other banks. What that means is we should not expect 100% of the money back as such, right? Because the government, unless the government funds it, the money that we get back from our deposits will only come from sale of assets minus liabilities. And if the value of the assets keeps going down, liabilities remain the same, the net available will keep reducing. And it's going to be a tranche payment as we go along. So as I said, somewhere between 3 to 6 to 12 months is when we should expect payments to come in. And we should expect somewhere between 50 to 90%, 50 on the very bad side, 90% on the somewhat good side, a very good side, I should say, of our total deposits that we'll get back. I don't know exactly how it'll pay out because I'm not a financial analyst, and I don't know any financial analyst in the world who can actually predict how much of this value will be extracted through their current mortgage-backed securities and other assets that SVB holds currently.
So let's talk about the second payment, because a lot of folks are asking us about that. How do we at all gauge what the second payment next week could be, or the second value to be allowed out next week would be? There really is no clarity on that, but there will be a second availability next week. We just can't tell how much it will be, right? Right, Anil?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, and then the third one, obviously, as Anil said, it's impossible for any of us to calculate.
But again, on top of all of this is really, if your wire had been approved, then you should get paid next week, right? That's a binding obligation, but that needs to get paid before anybody else, any of the other depositors get paid.
So 4 steps then. What you've initiated will go through.
If approved, if deemed approved, yes, prior to FDIC taking over.
Will go through. Second in line would be the 250,000 insured limit. Third in line would be what they fire sale or what they sell off next week and grant from that sale. And then the third would be the rest in government proceedings over the next 1 year or so. And then, of course, behind all of those is those who have loaned to SVB and those who, of course, have shareholders of SVB. Okay, good. So we have a break. Credit card. Okay, we've answered this. Saw some posts about domestic wire transfers anywhere. Okay, we've answered this. Yeah. So what does the business need to do to get the 250,000? I think we've answered this as well. We're going to circulate a link just here in the chat.
I think it's done already. Yeah.
Okay.
And very quickly, one of my associates, Manya, has joined, and she's the one who wrote the memo and has been talking to, and in fact, she is volunteered, I guess, with my partner, Chris, to go to FDIC this afternoon. So hopefully by our morning, we'll have more answers. So they're going to be physically going there to the extent there's anybody to answer question, we're trying to get as much as we can. So Mani, any thoughts to share or in terms of what you found so far?
So I think the situation is not as dire if any transfers were made prior to the submission deadline that SVB has on their banking website. And in most cases for domestic US to US transfers, that deadline is 3 p.m. PT. And so if your transfer was made by that time, the chances are that on Thursday itself, it was processed and you would have seen it as pending in your other bank account. Any transactions that were made post that time, those are the ones that are likely to be stuck, but there is a high possibility that they can get approved by Monday morning. However, if transactions were made after 9 a.m. on Friday, and all of these are Pacific time zone times that I'm mentioning. So if they were made after 9 a.m., which is when FDIC took over all operations of the Silicon Valley Bank, those are unlikely to go through, according to me, in terms of what SVB is going to approve, because they were not managing or looking at any transactions at and beyond that point of time. Another thing to note is that
Mani, sorry, just to make sure everyone, because this is a critical point for a lot of people on this call. And if you see the questions, I think majority. So what is the timeline then? So you're saying if the wire had been submitted or in process by 9 a.m. Pacific on the 10th, right?
So if it had been submitted by 3 p.m. On 9th March, which is Thursday, it will most definitely go through, according to me, because it would have been processed on Thursday itself. If it was submitted post 3 p.m. but before 9 a.m., that's the gray area which we are unsure as to what the pending and processing means, because it was initiated before FDIC took over, but after the close of their SVB submission deadline for wire transfers. But if it was after 9 a.m., if it was initiated after 9 a.m., I believe it's unlikely to go through, because at that point of time, SVB was no longer in control of the operations. And so those wires, I don't believe, should be going through on Monday. They will most likely be returned, and you would be getting a notification on the return stating that because the bank is closed, this transaction cannot be completed. Another thing that I wanted to point out was with respect to how to get the $250,000 of the FDIC insured money. So what has happened is, because FDIC has been appointed as a receiver, there is no requirement per se immediately to be filing claims or to be writing letters to FDIC if you have less than $250,000 in your account. If you have more than that amount, in that situation, you should be trying to contact the FDIC to try and understand the claims process, because for all of the uninsured part of funds that you would have in your bank account, for those it is possible that a claim might be needed to be filed. And for that amount, it is important that you should try to get in touch with a claims agent that the FDIC has. They will guide you in terms of what forms need to be filed, etc. All these forms are available on the website, but for the $250K of insured money, and especially if you have less than that in your account, there is no requirement to file a claim at this point of time. That is something FDIC will automatically start to give back to you come Monday or in the coming week. Another thing that we should be hopeful for, looking at previous years and previous bank failures that have happened, is that this weekend is really crucial, because during this weekend, FDIC is going to be trying to see if there can be a buyer for the bank. So come Monday, there's also possibility of a merger, or there's also possibility that another bank acquires all of the deposits, or at least all of the insured deposits. So the claims process might change significantly in that regard as well. So I think waiting till Monday before filing any forms might be a good idea.
Great. Thanks so much, Manya. Appreciate the inputs. Please stay with us. How can we get a multinational bank without a social security number, US address proof of directors? There's a number of options there. Brex, obviously, Puyo was there earlier, Mercury. Which other options are out there? Ankit, Anil, any options out there that you're aware of?
I'm not. Frankly, I didn't even know you could open a bank account with Brex without a social security number. But yeah, I don't do that part of the banking side of things at all.
Ankit, any inputs there? Okay, I'll give some inputs here. So most of the high street big banks are asking folks to have a physical person, officer on the ground in the United States to visit a branch with a passport and come in and open there in the branch live. Now, if that's not possible, and obviously that's not possible for most founders here, there are two other banks that are willing, two other high street banks, I should say, who are willing to entertain founders who live overseas with a specific situation. It's HSBC and Citibank. Please get in touch, we'll pass you on to those. They have their, for example, for the India-based founders here, which I think is most of you, they have branches and reps here in India. Initially, until now, they were insisting that you open a relationship with them through your India entity, whether that's a parent or a subsidiary, and that will therefore ease up the KYC or the KYB, sorry, for your subsidiary or parent account opening for your US entity. Now, however, a bunch of people, including ourselves, have been putting pressure on these banks to ask them to lighten up on the requirement to have a India entity account with them, and they're now willing and open for business, so opening directly the US account, and they're very much entertaining that. They will still have to do the KYB, KYC here, but they therefore take you into a certain form, code, approval process. We can connect you with those folks, and that will ease up your Citibank and HSBC US Bank account open. Cool. Yeah, that's right. In terms of other banks who are out there to approach without a social security number and address proof, you're largely with the neobanks here at this point. Okay, that answers that one. What's happened to the wires initiated? I think we've answered this one. Thanks for setting this up. We have the exact steps with the FDIC insurance to claim. Yeah, so there's a link here, Raghav from Algotest, resolutions.fdic.gov/claims portal. So we're going to please ask you to have a look at that. A lot of YC startups use the nominee to incorporate and open a bank account. If the nominee needs to do the claim for the insured amount, in most cases, the nominee is not attached anymore. Anil, quick comment on this. At the time of incorporation, nominees are there in the US entity. I guess they would have to submit the claim. In these cases, they're the officers at the time.
Yes, I mean, the company has to submit the claim, and obviously whoever the officer is has to process that on behalf of the company. Yes.
Okay, great. Will the ACH ever debit or get cancelled and go back? From Column Labs, I can briefly answer that. So ACH, once it is left your bank, if it's an ACH debit, usually the bank who is receiving the money will front you the money. And there is a chance that they will reverse that transaction because they're effectively loaning you money until they receive it. That's with ACH debit. It's like almost them pulling the money out of the other bank. With ACH credit, that's a different arrangement because you're pushing the money out of the bank. In this case, let's say SVB, you go into the SVB website and you push the money out. In both cases, the real safety, of course, is when the money's 3 days out, settled into the other bank. But in this case, ACH credit is the risk factor. On top of all of this, of course, the safest is Fedwire, which is instant. There is ACH same day, of course. It's more expensive, but it's still ACH. The safest is Fedwire. and of course Swift payments that leave the bank immediately. Okay, not immediately, but within the windows. Okay, Kanchan Gupta is asking if a status showing ready an SVB transaction created for transfer, does that mean it's processing or amount still with? So Kanchan, I think I've seen this question pop up 100 times. I'm just going to address this, that the transaction timing matters. It's hard for us to say. We don't know the nature of your transaction, how you sent it, what date, time you sent it on, whether you were before the cutoff, after the cutoff, etc. So hard for us to say here, but needless to say, as earlier was established, if the government deems that your transaction is appropriate and was approved before their involvement, then it seems, as Manya earlier put, that should be settled by Monday.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Manya said, I think there are three categories, right? One is before 3 p.m. Pacific on Thursday. Those should have been, according to SVB's website and their processing times, should have been processed already and will get paid, right, by Monday, Tuesday, whatever the timelines are. Any wires submitted between 3 p.m. and 9 a.m. on Friday should also have been approved by SVB, but would not have been processed because their timelines for processing would be next day. But if they were approved or deemed approved, then FDIC still has to make that payment, most likely, right? And then anything after 9 a.m. on Friday is in the latter category, which will not get paid until the whole process runs out.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's dive deep. Anurag Datta says, will the 250K be available on SVB net banking or through some other website? What we've heard is that you'll be allowed back in to access that 250,000 within the SVB website. Anil, Ankit, have you heard any different?
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, in the sense, I don't know where to hear from because there's no one at SVB that's telling us, and FDIC, I don't know if they have the rules yet.
Yeah,
I think what they're doing is they've created this other agent, new bank. They're going to invest money into that bank, whether it comes into SVB or directly to your account. I'm not sure, to be determined as far as I know.
okay, cool. So, Anurag, but it'll be clear by Monday and available by Monday. That's the government is committed to. So. Okay, Ravi says, is the takeover still an option or not? In this case, will there be a chance that we get 100% of the money? Ravi, I think that's difficult for us to comment on. We've heard of takeover rumors, and it's all over the news as well, but it's hard to say. And even if it does, I think it's clear that any takeover would be contingent. Let's say, some big high street bank comes in, be contingent on them not necessarily insuring everyone's money if the assets of the bank were not covering that. So I think the takeover doesn't necessarily mean that your money is 100% protected. I think what you really have to assume is, at the worst case, you're getting 250,000. Medium case, you're getting a little bit more than that, and best case, you're getting all of it back if the assets of the bank are being recovered. That's what I've been told by officials. So I think you rely on that. The takeover, whether that inputs or not to your full recovery. Anil, do you have any input on that?
Yeah, again, I mean, I don't have any information. I'm just thinking that I just don't see a takeover, any viable sort of. If it had to happen, it would have happened before Thursday, before 49 billion was taken out in one day. Because why would any bank? There's no attractiveness anymore, right? I mean, why would any bank want to take over a SVB, for example, where they know that as soon as they start the operation, everyone's going to take the remaining money out? What's there to take over at that point, right? All the deposits are going to be out. So I just don't see that happening for that reason.
Okay, thank you. Anil,
I would add that, my bigger concern is that would sort of Monday morning, that would mean people who have companies that have bank accounts with other banks are also going to be considering taking their money out. So there could be, we will very likely see a run on some of the other similarly placed technology banks. And that will just exacerbate the problem. And that's why the one good option on the table is for the feds to come in and try to find a solution and calm everybody down. Otherwise, I don't know. I mean, the speaker earlier was saying it's not going to be 2008, 2009. I live on the paranoia on these things. I think if they don't find a quick solution to SVB in the next week or so, we will expect a lot of runs on other banks, and the panic will just sort of spook everything. And let's see where. I just don't know where we'll end up with, frankly, after that.
Great. There's a question here from Anurag. If wires were approved, will it go through even if it was greater than 250,000, or will only 250,000 go through? I think the answer there is pretty clear, is that if the transaction was approved, the whole thing will go through. It's not just that $250,000 will go through. The $250,000 is not related to that. The $250,000 is related to how much is being made available by the government on Monday for insurance purposes. So Anurag, hopefully that answers your question. Is if a transaction was approved, it's definitely going through to the full extent.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind with the caveat that if you have any limits, right, or daily limits or whatever other limits, then it's not subject to those limits.
And subject to you having punched in the account details correctly. For example, hopefully your transaction didn't bounce because you typed in some incorrect account number, that kind of thing.
And if you're wiring to India, for example, then subject to the SWIFT code, and sometimes the intermediary bank rejects it, comes back to SVB or goes back in Ether and nobody knows where it is. Those could be very tricky situations.
Yeah. Okay, great. Is there a okay, what's the cutoff time? I think what's the transfer mode? What transfer mode is the fastest to a Gift City bank account? Ankit, quick input on that. I think it's pretty clear to me is that
I think we lost Ankit. Yeah,
okay. Ankit had power cut actually. I think he's back. Is Ankit back here? Just see. You'll have to promote him again. Okay, 1 second. I'll promote the panelist. Okay, Ankit, you're back on the panel. Hopefully, I think we can see you. Yeah, Ankit's back on the panel.
Yeah, hi. So sorry about the power cut. I dropped out. Yeah, can you please repeat the question?
Fastest way to transfer to a Gift City bank account from the US bank account. Any quick comment on that?
So how fast it is?
Fastest way. It's SWIFT. The obviously Fedwire is what's the answers to this in terms of
Yeah, you have to. Yeah. So Gift is a offshore jurisdiction that Indian government started in 2016, and a separate regulator came in, parallel regulator from RBI came in, which is called IFSCA, in 2020. So it's not part of Fed network as of now, and I'm not sure if it would be in coming future as well. So you have to do a SWIFT. To be clear, there is no local clearing at Gift as well as of now. So you have to do SWIFT between Gift City entities as well at this point of time. So yes, you have to do a SWIFT from your US account to the Gift City accounts, but it would not be considered FDI because the Gift City account is in the name of your US entity itself, or Singapore entity, or any other entity in whose name you are making that account.
Great, thank you. FDIC, okay, yeah. Question final. We had all our cash in SVB for our subsidiary in the US. Should we look to do an urgent ODI considering the uncertainty, or wait for the 250 to come out? What's the fastest way to fund the US company now? So this is a US subsidiary of an Indian parent. They've run out of money in the US. They desperately, I guess, need to get some money into it for something, presumably US payroll. Should they do an ODI from their India parent to the US subsidiary?
I mean, that's a business decision, right? But on the other hand, you should start, if you haven't already set up another bank, right? So whenever you decide to transfer the money, all of that information, the bank is set up. That's the critical part right now. Whether you want to transfer, obviously, if your business needs it, you need to run payroll, and your board, whatever else approvals are needed, has approved it, you should transfer it. Keep in mind, there's uncertainty about the access to the funds in SVB. So you have to make sure the cash flow wise, that all of that works out for the business.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, it should be either a loan or an investment. I guess you'd need to speak to attorney in terms of an investment into your US subsidiary. In terms of a loan, it would be your accountant in India drafting, well, necessarily enabling the correct methodology for you to send that out of the Indian account. Okay. In terms of the Adit Palicha says, what can we deem as an approved wire? Does that mean the status of the wire is in process? I just joined in case this was covered. Yeah, sorry, it was covered. If it says in process, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going through. It depends on the time that you initiated the transaction. Okay, so how will the first and second payments come through? Will the 250,000 plus the second payment be available in our DINB account automatically? Okay, yeah. So the government has not clarified this yet, but it will be available. 250,000 will be available on Monday. The other second amount by the end of the week will be available by Friday. That's two promises, the pledges the government has made. In terms of how you do it, that will be clarified, I'm pretty sure, by tomorrow or by Monday itself. Whether that's the inside Silicon Valley Bank's net banking or whether that's a third-party website, please, the best thing that you can do right now is A, set up a new bank account in the US, and B, get your paperwork in order and fill in this link here on the resolutions portal. Okay, Times of India reported that around 42 billion was attempted to be withdrawn on Thursday. Would SVB be able to honor all of them since FDIC didn't come into the picture till then? I think everything has been answered here by Manya as well. That was approved before the resolution on Friday. That is the deadline. That is the timeline about what will go through and what will not go through. One can look at gifts. Okay. Is HSBC still a good option with respect to being a large and stable bank in the US? Snehanshu, I don't think we can comment really on one bank, but what we've heard multiple times, experts telling us is diversify and keep large balances in a diversified method, so that if there is any further risk of systemic risk of instability with fintechs, neobanks, etc., then at least you're diversified through treasury, through neobanks, and through banks. That's even what Puya was saying. So just the hard thing you're going to have here is, of course, is opening a high street bank account. The two that I mentioned, HSBC USA and Citibank USA, are both willing to entertain you, even if you're not physically present in the US. So please get in touch with them. We're happy to connect you. Okay, Gaurav says, okay, I'm going to switch this. Please don't mention over the list of bank names which is actively assisting in India fast track account openings. Okay, so we're gonna give you that link again on our website, the top, inkle.io at the top there, the snack bar. Click on that. You can get the contact details of the banks that are willing to help fast. Anil, for companies that still have Anil Advani as a signing person for SVB, will they be able to do the claims process themselves, or will they need Anil's help? Anil,
If I'm still whoever the nominee is, right? So you'll need to process that, yeah. But reach out to us directly as soon as you can.
We initiated ACH debit to Brex from SVB. Okay. Yeah. So Column Labs is asking about ACH debit. So I'll briefly comment on this. The ACH debit is the riskiest of the ACH types in terms of ACH, same day ACH, credit ACH debit. The reason it's the riskiest is because, as I said, the other bank, in this case Brex, or the fintech or the asset manager, has to debit that money still, and it hasn't been done. So they'll take up to 3 days to do that. And if they can't do it, they will initiate a reclaim against you of the money that they fronted you. So be warned about that. It's the riskiest. I also am aware that Brex has a $50,000 limit per week on ACH debit. So I'm not sure how much you did, Column Labs, but just check on that in terms of the amounts. Okay.
I know one very quick thing, update. I mean, Basant Kedia, who's the managing director at First Republic Bank, he'd also like to join because he wants to talk about FRB, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'll send him a Zoom, so the copy to the link, I think whenever he dials in, we can add him as a panelist.
I can't see him in the list. Kedia,
dialing in now.
okay.
Kedia, Basant Kedia.
Yeah, I can't see him here. Ranveer, just keep an eye on PC. Okay. You must have a state-issued ID to access the FDIC portal. Does that mean a US ID? Sanjay, I haven't got to that stage in the link yet, but really sure that you do not need a US issued ID, because I've seen others have got to it. Yeah. So please look at it again. I'm pretty sure that you'll find that it does not have to be a US issued government ID. Okay. Is there, okay, got it. What was the exact time of the, yeah, I think we've answered this. Kanchan's answered this one. All right. Gaurav Agarwal has a live question. Gaurav, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So we have parked our money in SVB in MMA account and normal account. Just wanted to check whether MMA account money is also insured or both insured together 250K. And is there a priority over MMA account money getting transferred to us earlier? Is there any priority in getting back both the accounts from both the accounts, money from both the accounts? Am I audible?
Gaurav, you're audible. I think you'll have to repeat. Sorry, can you just clarify? I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. So we have an account in SVB where we parked our money in MMA account and the normal account. So is the insurance on both the accounts together 250K insured? And what happens to the uninsured amount? Because most of our money is parked in MMA account. So is there a priority on which amount from which account gets back to us earlier?
Yeah. Okay. So $250,000 per bank, per depositor, per type. That is the insurance. Okay. In terms of the, so you're talking about SVB MMA, right?
Yeah, SVB MMA.
Yeah. So my understanding is that this is included. Maybe I'm sorry. Maybe I actually answered this or confused myself or confused the query before. The MMA is included within the money market mutual funds are not federally insured, right?
Okay.
Talking about money market mutual funds?
I am not sure actually. It's the account name is MMA account.
Yeah. So money market accounts are insured. Money market mutual funds are not federally insured. So please check which one you have. Yeah?
MMA.
Think about it as a deposit account versus non-deposit account, right? So how you characterize that?
Got it. Yeah. So money markets account are insured up to $250,000 for each account holder. Yeah.
Okay.
But the money mutual funds are not federally insured, and those are generally offered by brokers and other such. Yeah. So please check which one you have. But certainly the FDIC insurance covers $250,000 in MMAs as well.
Okay. And is there a priority in like when the uninsured amount is getting back, is there a priority in which amount, which account, which money from which account gets back first?
I didn't understand the nature of your question. Can you try to clarify, sir?
So what I'm asking,
I'll answer that.
Yeah.
So there is no priority in both of these accounts. From a FDIC standpoint, both are same. Right? It has been deposited in the same against the same EIN.
got it.
So and 250K, anyways, the timeline that we have, people should start receiving them or at least have allocation from FDIC by Monday.
Got you. Thank you.
Is Basant here? I can't see him. Ranveer.
He said he's joined, but
We may have sent him the wrong link again. So
no, he said he's joined already, so he should be online.
no, I'm saying that if we send him the joiner link for Ankit Parasha, it appears Ankit Parasha. Yeah. So you got to check what link you send him. Yeah.
Oh, can you add him as on, because I think I may have sent him the link, and I don't know if that's a different link then.
Yeah.
Anand, I could see him in the panelist a while back.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, we'll wait for him to rejoin. Maybe he lost his connection. Okay. Any other further live questions? Please raise your hands, and we'll take them live right now. Okay, anonymous attendee says, I have a personal social security number from when I lived there. Can I use that to open my company bank account? You know, the most important thing when you're opening a company bank account is an EIN number. Your social number will help with high street banks. The neobanks, for example, don't need it. So just, yeah, what you really need is an EIN number for your company. If you have that, then I think you're fine. The social number also itself won't necessarily help if you're not physically present in the US for certain high street banks like Bank of America, Chase, that kind of thing. For HSBC in City, as I mentioned, depends on your relationship with the foreign branch reps here in India, for example. I hope that answers your question about SSN. Essentially, what I'm concluding is that it might help, but again, I think it really helps whether you have an EIN number, number one, and number two, whether you're actually physically present in the US. Okay, great. I'm going to go to Himanshu from Quick Reply. Have you tried filling the claim form for FDI clients? Multiple countries, does not have Singapore. Any suggestions? I presume you're asking that your entity is a Singapore entity. Himanshu, I don't have an answer for you on this. I'm sorry, I will get my team to research on this and come back to you. Please drop us an email, hello@inkle.io. I'm going to type, Ranveer is going to type it right here in the chat. Please drop us and we'll respond as soon as possible. Okay, can you type in the email? Just to clarify. Okay, great, Anurag, thanks. When we fill in the claims form, it says the selected bank was not put into the receivership of FDIC. Will it get activated on Monday? Again, I have not been to that. Yes. So, okay. So we're getting that will be available to you to submit on Monday. Main thing I think is to prepare for that is to have your documents ready and activate a new bank account. Okay. We've initiated. Funds have been considered. Okay, yeah. So we've initiated an internal transfer from MMA to analysis checking account before Friday. I think the answer to your question then is that the money is still with SVB, from SVB's one pocket to another pocket. And that's on Friday. So I'm not sure that's really going to help you there. The full amount is still with SVB. So I think I don't have an answer for this either. Ranveer is going to come back to you on this. Please drop us an email and we'll come back to you. But my guess here on this point is that from what we've understood and having spoken to officials is that you've just moved the money internally. That's not really going to help you. The deadline there doesn't seem to matter. Okay, personal question. I have some personal money in a small credit union bank. They usually don't allow me to international wire without calling. What should I expect next week? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not aware of personal credit banks. So I'm going to skip this one because we need to focus on Silicon Valley Bank situation. To open a bank in the big banks like Chase and Bank of America, yeah, this is coming up again and again. Can one travel on B1, B2 and open the account without an SSN, given the entire operations are in India? US is only a headquarter with 0 employees in the office. Yeah, I've personally done this, so I can vouch for this. I was on a B1. I went to the US, opened a Bank of America corporate account for my US Delaware C Corp. I have no SSN number. I had no address proof. I just had my foreign passport. So I can 100% confirm that if you're physically present in a branch of Chase, Bank of America, Citibank as well, other big US high street banks, you can do it on a B1, B2. They don't frankly care so much what visa you're on. They just more care that you have a US entity with an EIN number and you're physically there to do the KYC. And you don't need an SSN. And you don't need a personal address proof either. Okay, cool. And to answer that in a slightly different way, it's probably not a bad idea if you have many millions and also if you have time and you can head out there at some point. I don't think it's the most urgent thing. I think there are other ways to protect the assets. For example, with, as I mentioned, with Citibank, HSBC, opening your US account, etc., with Brex, with Treasury, with Mercury, Mercury Treasury, etc. Okay. Any further live questions? Otherwise, Basant, is Basant here now?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, we had him for a moment and then I'm just worried that he's not on a.
Yeah. I think because he's securities license, he was worried about being on a recorded line. So
Oh, I
I told him we can get him later as well. You know. Yeah.
Okay, good. Any further questions that we've not covered here? Ranbir, anything? Okay, I'm just wrapping. We're going to wrap up in a couple of minutes here, but if the crowd feels that. I'm sorry, which one? From Katrina? Okay. Do we have any? I haven't seen this link. What is this link?
Is it table on which form to fill?
Okay. Okay, got it. Katrina, please drop. I think we have your details registered here. Please drop us. We'll guide you through the form filling. Thank you. Okay. If there's no further live questions, we're actually going to wrap up here. Yeah, I guess to take a general view on this, Anil, Ankit, and myself, and Manya as well. We're not in the US. Well, Manya is and Anil normally is, but we're not US banking specialists. So we're trying our best to give you answers just based on our perspective, what we've heard and what we've read and what we've understood. So a lot of this may sound like guesswork, so I apologize if that's the case. But we're still reading through. We're going to try and put as much as possible on our website. But keep firing emails to us or chats to us, and we will get back to you as much as we can. The bottom line seems to be Monday, there's going to be a lot of clarity about what's available, how to move it, and how to claim the rest of it. So I'll just end my comments there. Anil, any final thoughts?
No, I think this was a good session. We've covered a lot. You're right. Things will sort of unfold over the next 24, 48 hours, and all the action will start on Monday morning. So keep your eyes on FDIC, keep your eyes on Inkle and, you know, all the other sources, platforms that are, and probably away from everything else, right? So don't get distracted. I think the key is to have a second account ready to go because you'll need that. So please, if you haven't done it, work on that. That's the most critical. Make sure you're ready to process the whatever documentation are required. So your EIN number, your COI, the certificate of incorporation, who your nominee is, who your director is. Make sure all of that information is properly sorted out so that you don't want to be like, you know, back in line on Monday morning, right? So you want to be first in line. But I think we've covered everything else at this based on the information we know as of now.
Great. Ankit, thank you, Anil. Ankit, last comments on what you're seeing as good options for folks to move money to India, move money within the US. Just a brief summary for 30 seconds.
Yeah, sure. So right now, I think there is no moving money from SVB to anywhere. So people would have moved money already. They would either have done FDI or money movement to Brex. Now, a lot of folks have reached out because they don't trust Brex as well. So they would move money to a more traditional bank where you either have to wait for 10, 15 days for HSBC and Citi to open accounts. Or right now, the fastest option is RBL. They are working on weekends as well. So they have promised a couple of hours to open accounts, which we are working with them. You can send us to your certain documents to us or them directly, and they will open where you can wire funds. In next 10 days, you have to basically it's activation on deferral. You have to complete your documentation in next 10 days. So that's what they have done. I think that's what they have taken a compliance approval on.
Ankit, what bank was that? Sorry, I missed that name.
This is RBL bank. RBL.
Okay.
Right. So you basically there is an account opening form and there is EIN COI that you need to send, and they will open a bank account which you can wire to, and then do your KYC on a referral basis in next 10 days. That's the deal from them. We are also working with ICICI and all, but okay. So coming back to the point, you have money in Brex, you want to move it, you move it to the Gift City accounts. Instead of moving to India, to be honest, because like if you have a Gift City option, it's the same bank. Second, if you have already initiated Gift City, FDIs, then there is a KYC issue that you might have. If you have already done KYC or FDI in next past 6 months, you should be good. Otherwise, there are few ways you can do still do KYC via your Brex, transferring small amounts and doing KYC, but you need specific approvals for that. We definitely can help and connect separately on that if that is the case. But you have to work with your bank closely and your RM closely. So just call them up, tell them that you have done the transfer so that they can take care of. Because you have to really work with your RMs at this point.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna briefly just share my screen as my final parting comment. Hope you can all see it.
Yes.
Moving money internationally to subsidiaries or parents. I've made a little chart here, which I discussed in my webinar yesterday, which you can see on inkle.io/talks about intercompany transfers. So I'm going to delete these two columns here because they fall outside of kind of this main purview of royalty and dividend. I'm just going to hide these here to give more clarity on these three. Foreign direct investment, transfer pricing, and external commercial borrowing. If you need more clarity on these, please reach out to myself through hello@inkle.io. We have a perspective on this. Please watch the video from yesterday. When you're moving money to India, what it's for, how you're going to move it, which purpose code, what paperwork you need to do, the tax and cost and transaction cost implications, and the repatriability. I've tried to take a little snapshot here. I'm not going to go through it, but it's there on the video from yesterday and separately on the Gift City account as well. Okay, that's my final parting comment. Thanks to the panel. Thanks very much, Anil. And thank you to Ankit.
Thanks, Anil.
And yeah, folks, there'll be a recording of this shortly on inkle.io/talks, and look forward to interacting with you all again. Stay safe and keep spirits up, and we'll be hoping to help you all as the days come by. Thank you.
Thank you.